I think we're going to see a boom in the next 3 years of more traditionally SaaS and sales-focused teams taking advantage of this type of content. What it does is it shortens your sales cycle because people are able to watch a 90-second or 3-minute ad and not only be introduced to the problem and solution that it's solving, but also hit on some of the frequently asked questions, some of the pain points. And that prospect, before they've even reached out, has already started to place in their mind where they think your product or service is going to fit in their world.
All right, welcome to today's VidTao Podcast. This is VidTao co-founder Ian Naj, and today we are going to be speaking with Mr. Jacques Spitzer. So you definitely have seen Jacques' work. His agency Raindrop has generated over 1 billion views on YouTube and over 750 million in campaign sales for brands like Dr. Squatch, Manscaped, Lume, Ruggable, William Painter, Works, Omigo, Crossrope. The list goes on and on and on. Jacques has won 2 Emmy awards for his ads at Raindrop and had the top performing YouTube ad of 2020, and as well as an amazing Super Bowl commercial for Dr. Squatch that really blew up their business, blew it wide open, scaled it massively. So Jacques has a ton to share on what makes a good YouTube ad, what makes a good video ad generally, and really an honor to have Jacques on the show. Can't wait to get into it with you. So without further ado, let's chat with Jacques. This podcast is brought to you by VidTao.com. VidTao is our free YouTube ad library and spy tool, research tool. It's VidTao.com. At VidTao, we have close to 1 million unlisted YouTube video ads that you can search, find, discover how they're doing on a day-by-day basis, so you can really see what ads your competitors are running, see ads in different markets that you can model to create new winning ads for yourself, and a whole lot more. It's all there inside VidTao.com. Plus, we have a premium edition. So the database is free to access, but then we also have a premium edition where you have full unlimited access to the database. And inside there, we also provide training. So we also run an agency called Inceptly. That's INCEPTLY, Inceptly.com, where we've managed over $150 million on YouTube. It's a video traffic agency, and we've worked with everyone from brands like Descript.com, Huel, to real scrappy direct response, info products, supplements, health, beauty, e-commerce, you name it, we've done it, and love sharing what we've learned. Every week we drop new training in there, everything from YouTube ad media buying to running e-commerce creatives on YouTube to hardcore tracking and attribution tutorials to really level up your data science game for advertising, and everything in between. Right now, as we speak, we're working on a training regarding YouTube Shorts. Hopefully we'll be live by the time you hear this. On and on and on. This is our passion, is video advertising, and we want to share it with you inside of VidTao Premium. And actually right now, for a limited time, you can get access to VidTao Premium for a very special price. So if you go to VidTao.com, sign up for free, check out the database, upgrade to Premium for this very special price, you'll get access to all of the database and all the trainings. And also wanted to add that at Inceptly, we do free brainstorm calls with clients like you. So if you ever want to get help or ask questions about your YouTube ads, your video traffic on other platforms, we're available to chat. Just go to inceptly.com/call, CALL, and set up a time to chat. It's free, and we'd love to speak with you. Our team's waiting to speak with you. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jacques Spitzer.
Oh man,
so good to have you.
And it's good to be here, and it was so nice to meet you in person in San Diego not too long ago. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, I mean, the honor is all ours, honestly. I mean, your work speaks for itself. Who doesn't know Dr. Squatch? And then really when you dive in with what you've done at Raindrop Agency, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So in terms of making comedic, entertaining ads that actually sell, man, I mean, we're your biggest fans, so it's an honor.
I appreciate it. Well, let's give away all of our secrets today.
All right. Well, I didn't want to be too, make too big of an ask, but yeah, I'd love to dig in and ask some questions. Was fortunate to watch a bit of your presentation or your whole presentation in San Diego, and was super exciting to see everything that you've been sharing. And I have more questions on top of what what I do know about your process. But I actually wanted to start off with something just a little bit different. And I want to get into your backstory and how you came into this whole crazy world. But first, I'd love to, if you could just walk us through, for Dr. Squatch specifically, can you walk us through, did you have any ads that didn't work? Like, what were some things that you tested, that you did, that maybe you thought would work? And then, for whatever reason, they just didn't work. Is there anything you can share on that front?
Yeah, I love how you started with, so tell me about the project that you did that didn't work for them.
Well, clearly it worked. But I'm just wondering, there must have been some.
No. I love it. So maybe to walk people, because I think to understand what didn't work and why it didn't work, I think is two important pieces. Because I think a lot of brands make a similar mistake all the time. And it's something that as an outside partner, we're always bringing this perspective into our clients. And I would say that most groups get bored advertising to their core audience over and over and over again. And they start to think, well, maybe my growth will come from hitting a new audience in a new way. And so in general, take Dr. Squatch, for instance, it's like, guess their core audience. I want you to guess.
The core audience. Okay. I think I might have heard this from you. Is it women who buy soap for the men in their life?
No,
it's not.
It is men buying for themselves, primarily 18 to 50.
Okay.
So that's the core audience for the product and the consumer. And so, that had been working so well for the first couple of years that we went, maybe we should try going after a completely different audience, which was a more female-driven audience. Mm-hmm. We're like, okay, well, what if we led with a woman, not only speaking to a female audience about buying this product for someone that they know, but potentially even for themselves, right? Kind of like that whole angle of like, I stole my boyfriend's soap, or, I got this for my husband and now I can't stop using it. That kind of mindset. And so that campaign just fundamentally didn't perform well when we had a more female-based lead. And what we found in general is that the only time women tend to work really with the brand is when it's in an environment where it makes sense. So in other words, no cheap or easy, like, okay, we're just going to throw a beautiful woman in the ad and it'll just work, is that just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. What does work though is like when we took the soap down to the beach and we had men trying, with a camping shower, we used a rinse kit, like a portable shower, like pressurized shower. Mm-hmm. And so we brought the rinse kit down to the beach and we had the men trying the soap, in real time, and then having women smell it and responding to it. Mm-hmm. That did really resonate and work, I think, because it made sense given the context. But yeah, that was probably the only campaign I can think of that just absolutely, like, within, a couple weeks, if months, they were like, we should probably turn this thing off. It's not performing in the way we wanted. And what I started with was people being sort of bored with, their core audience. What I mean, bored's a tough word, but mm-hmm. what I mean by that is I think people underestimate, just how much juice there is to squeeze from their core demographic before they start going off on these other demographics they want to go after outside their core audience. The same thing happens too with like product selections and SKUs. People will launch products that don't necessarily, at the time, they seem to make sense, but later on, like, oh shoot, like, of course this didn't sell our core audience. isn't really interested in this product from us. And I've seen that mistake a couple of times too. So whether it's advertising campaigns or new product launches, they kind of the trap there is like you fall into, it seems like a good idea, but really it's because you feel like you've done a lot of work towards the core audience and you want to try a new one. And look, the only way to learn is by trying. And that's the other thing I would add is that, there's no such thing as failure as long as you're learning from it. It's a more expensive learning mistake, but you do learn from it.
Got it. Makes sense. And then on that front, I mean, that's amazing advice. And seriously, as you're saying that, I'm kind of taking it to heart for some of the stuff that we're doing. But there must be instances you can think of where you did take that leap and try something like that, and you did open up a new market. I'm just wondering, can you think of any examples where that was the case?
Yeah, it's really, it's a good question. I think what comes to mind is usually it's not so much maybe markets as it is channels. Because I don't think that fundamentally it's really difficult to shift your product to a new audience. I'm not gonna say it doesn't exist. I've seen a couple of brands actually do it recently. Stanley is one. They're like I don't know, like almost like a Yeti thermos hydro flask type of product. They've made this pivot. Old Spice invested heavily in making that pivot probably 15, 20 years ago when they went from being like your grandfather's, face lotion / deodorant to a more younger skewed brand. But I would say in most cases, people find new channels to reach similar audiences rather than necessarily like changing their core demographics. I would say too, obviously there's some gender, like a classic question with brands is like how to approach new genders. So like, if you are a more male heavy brand, do you try to diversify into a female product SKU? Do you spin off a completely different brand as more female specific and makes people feel like they're speaking more specifically to them? There's so many questions there, but I'm having a hard time really thinking about a campaign where we were like, oh my gosh, like we just discovered that we have this huge gold mine. I will say that with new channels does come new audiences. So like Dr. Squatch, who you talked about to start the show, they really made inroads on TikTok where it went from people saying, hey, I love your ads. I love Dr. Squatch. I love your ads, to my kids love your ads. They see them on TikTok. They're 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16 years old. And as they rolled out into retail, that was a huge part of, success for them because now they have middle schoolers and high schoolers asking their parents and most likely their mom for the products themselves. So, brands can certainly grow out their core demo, but it's not like all of a sudden 16-year-old girls are using their soap, if that makes sense. It's not like all of a sudden it's broken in. It's like, it's broad in the age range that they can skew.
Got it. So side question on that was, did Dr. Squatch go retail before or after the Super Bowl ad?
Well, they've always had like a presence in more like small boutique type places, so you would be like traveling in Idaho and pop into a shop and oh, there's Dr. Squatch. But in terms of like Walmart and whatnot, that was after the Super Bowl launch, and I think that was part of their calculated plan to grow brand awareness leading into the larger retail presence nationwide. Amazing.
I mean, just must be insane to think about. So, you and I have discovered that we have a connection, both being UCSD Triton alumni, which is super cool. And how is it? Did you have any idea, back growing up, going to UC San Diego, that you would be a multi-Emmy award winning, how do you want to describe it? Creator of these amazing videos, amazing advertisements. having your stuff air on the Super Bowl. Like, how did this whole thing happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I was like 7, I wrote out, I want to be a professional ad creator, right? Like, that was what I knew I wanted to do. Nah, bro, I went to UCSD, as you mentioned, and had no idea what I wanted to major in. And actually didn't get into advertising right away. I didn't even know it was a thing, really. I mean, I knew people made commercials, but I didn't know how they were made. I didn't know who made them. I didn't know anything about them. Even after college, right? I didn't get my degree, and I got my degree in communications. But it wasn't until I was working at NBC writing news, and someone was like, "Hey, you'd be really good at advertising," and I was like, "You mean like writing the pest control commercials? Like, what do you mean? Like, because all that's on the local news is pretty much the pest control commercials and the heating and air commercials and the carpet jingles." Which, by the way, side note, I still really want to write a famous jingle. It's just like it's on my bucket list. But yeah, no, it was not something that was super top of mind. And even when I started Raindrop, it was just me. I was 25, I want to say, when I started it. So I was young. I didn't know anything really about advertising. But when I was in college, I always think about my life would have looked a little bit different if TikTok and YouTube were big when I was in college, because I graduated in 2008. So this is like before peak YouTube, or even the beginning of monetized YouTube, really. And I had a show in college I did for fun where it was essentially a prank show. I didn't realize at the time, that was a thing, but my buddy and I would go down to Library Walk, that main drag, and we would do weird stuff with a hidden camera. So we'd sign it. I mean, we'd have a hidden camera. I got to find these, by the way. They're somewhere in the archives, but we'd set up a hidden camera and we would just do weird stuff. So like one of the episodes was seeing what people would do for a Klondike bar, since that was Klondike's whole thing. And so we were just asking them to do really bizarre stuff and then capturing it. We did an episode where we wore pink polos and then interviewed men about how they felt about wearing pink polos while wearing pink polos, and then like hugging them from each side in pink polos. I mean, just stupid stuff, right? We were in college, but I think even at that age, I just enjoyed, I don't know if it was the shock and awe factor of it, but I enjoyed the experience of doing something, getting people's reactions, and then stitching those reactions into something that people would want to watch. And so that was really where I got like my start, if you will. It wasn't even in advertising. It was just it's honestly the same type of stuff that like a Mr. Beast would do now. It's like, that's how my brain works. Very similar. So when I see these creators on YouTube, I'm like, yep, nope, like exactly how my brain has always thought about things. I have so many ideas. It's just that most of them are too inappropriate to actually do. If I'm honest, now that I'm the age I am at now, it's like you see the guys that are like the full send guys. I'm like, that's exactly the type of stuff I was doing in college.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you remember? So who was your first client you actually made a video for? Do you remember that?
Well, my very first client was a guy named Ray Wetterlin III. He was a personal trainer based out of San Diego. And, he just believed in me enough to pay me, I don't know what it was, $15-20 an hour to shoot some videos for him. And he started seeing a lot of success just by like, he was a classic case of like, you hear those people now that are like, oh man, if you put yourself out there and you're putting out content, three clips a day, 365 days a year, you're going to grow. Well, he was doing this back in like 2009, 2010. Like no one was doing this. So like he had me producing these 1-minute videos for him, and we were releasing like 3 to 4 a week.
Wow.
And there's a point where he had developed, I want to say like 100,000 Twitter followers, which again, at this time, like it's so hard to think this way, but it's like, it was totally foreign, other than celebrities. It was totally foreign to follow influencers or random people. Like it was like you basically just followed your friends. This is, at this point, we're talking Facebook had been open to the general public for like a year to a year and a half. It was so new, not just colleges. And so, here he was like dominating early Facebook. And so he, it was so interesting. He was my first client. We started figuring out he was a personal trainer. We figured out how to leverage his personality. And so we went to the local smoothie shop and we got RW3 was his like nickname, or the RW3 smoothie. And then we got like a life-size poster and put it up outside the smoothie shop, get your RW3 smoothie. Well, everyone that was going to the gym all of a sudden saw his face there. Because of my background in local news, I started pitching him all the local news stations for all the like relevant expert stuff around like how to keep your holiday weight down, new year, new you, all those type of news segments. So he started showing up on all these news segments. And that's literally where Raindrop started, was just he started seeing success. I started getting referrals, and that was it. Like, he was my first sort of foray into this world of marketing.
Wow. So you're doing the content and the distribution from pretty much day one, thanks to your experience at the news channel.
That was just it. Yeah. Yep. It was just kind of following the instincts of where to be and growing people, in his case, his personal brand.
Yeah. I mean, when you see your sort of like greatest hits collection at this point, right? Up to now, it's clear that there's so much direct response happening in the ads. I'm just wondering, so going from RW3 doing, PR and doing this sort of daily content, how do you make the transition to also then incorporating all these elements of making people take action, encouraging them to take action through the content? Just curious about how that process happened.
From those early days to where we're at now.
Yeah. I mean, how did you who's your first, would you say, direct response client, in the sense of, you're measuring exactly what results you're getting from the video? Because clearly, like, these videos have driven insane numbers, trackable numbers.
Totally.
Yeah. So like, where's that first instance where you go, oh, wow, I can actually see how this piece of content does versus this other piece of content I did, and then, learning from that?
Yeah. So, I mean, truly, our first full, because it's like we did a lot of different campaigns, but our first true direct to consumer client was Dr. Squatch, because they were doing just around $3 million at the time run rate per year. And so I remember Jack asking me, like, well, do you guys work with direct consumer brands? I was like, well, not yet, but I think we could do some really great work for you. He had been running his brand for 5+ years. And I knew it was a challenge, with it being a very pricey men's all natural soap in a category that just like didn't really exist at the time. And he took a risk on us, and it paid off big time. I mean, the first campaign saw its first life on Facebook, and then it saw a second life on YouTube in terms of the very first campaign. And then it just kept stacking on top of each other. That was 2017, and then 2018 and 19 were successful, but truly there was a campaign of kind of like our greatest hits, if you will, in 2020 that did like 250 million views.
Wow.
On YouTube, scalably, of course. And so it was interesting to see our first 3 longer form direct to consumer clients were the San Diego Symphony. Well, first it was Dr. Squatch, then San Diego Symphony, and then William Painter, which is a sunglass company, and their ad scaled to 70+ million views in just like a matter of months. And so all of those early campaigns told us like, oh, okay, we can do this, not just a one-off, but like we're seeing multiple campaigns thriving. And, I think it was helpful too that, Ezra Firestone was putting out media buying courses through Smart Marketer, still does. And a lot of our clients were starting to like learn how to buy YouTube ads appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Because out of the box, YouTube's not set up to scale media. It's great at capturing sort of like demand, people, people that are searching certain terms or whatever, but not great when it comes to like delivering top of funnel advertising. And so that was a big game changer, was when people started realizing just how successful YouTube could be for these brands to grow them by tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's been really exciting to be a part of the last 4 or 5 years.
Wow. So you would say that YouTube ads specifically have been a major, I guess, platform for Raindrop, probably the biggest platform?
I mean, yeah, we think about everything through an omnichannel approach. So like in general, we have certain campaigns that have done really, really well on Meta platforms.
Yeah.
It just depends on, again, where the audiences are. If you have especially if you have a broad male demo, I mean, anything that's like sunglasses, soap, anything broad male, wow, can it do well on YouTube? I mean, we have another client, Shady Rays, sunglass company, and the last couple of campaigns we've done for them have just been unbelievably epic in terms of the results and what they've seen. And the same thing with Dossier. Dossier is a kind of like a cologne and perfume type of company, and they're doing really, really well through YouTube. So is Bones Coffee. So again, broad audiences can do really, really well on YouTube. And I think for a lot of brands, they kind of hit a wall when it comes to what they can do on Meta. And so now they're trying to figure out TikTok, trying to figure out YouTube. They're trying to figure out OTT. And the brands that are still really winning in this environment aren't trying 3 new channels at once. They're just adding one more at a time because they've already figured out the other ones.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense for sure. I'm just curious, you worked with these companies, and it's super interesting you mentioned the San Diego Symphony, because I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know, but these symphonies, they have like epic sales teams. So it's crazy. They're super experienced, hardcore direct response marketers selling these symphony memberships. So I've never seen that one. I'm super curious. I want to check out what you did, because I'm sure it's amazing.
That's one of the more it's one of the more interesting campaigns we've ever done. It actually did really well on Facebook versus YouTube. But then again, that's where their core audience is going to be. But check out if you search old you meet new you, San Diego Symphony on YouTube, you should be able to find it. Nicole leads it. She heads it up. She's a actor and comedian, and she actually nails it. I mean, this video is 4 years old or so, but I think what we didn't anticipate was that the video did on Facebook about 1 million views organically in about 3 weeks. So it got shared around the world in this super niche community of high art form, and it uses what we call edutainment. So it's like, there's no, I think people get concerned when it comes to humor. They assume that it needs to be, fart jokes or something, and it's not. It really is. You can do it in a fun, clever, sophisticated way. And I think that YouTube spot, or not YouTube, the Symphony spot we did is a great example, because it's classy, but it's fun, and it's just unexpected. And I think a lot of brands, seeing a Symphony as well, it's like, to me, yes, growing Dr. Squatch to this point is a huge part of our success story. But I also would say the work we've done with Sing a Symphony was so interesting, because we doubled their ticket sales in the course of about 4 years.
Insane.
And doubling ticket sales where you're dealing with an art form that's hundreds of years old, an organization that's over 100 years old, is like, that's actually harder, I would say, to do. And we connected with new audiences by broadening the way we approach people. And so that video is a good example too of the risk that they were willing to take. I mean, I remember when Joan Cummings, the VP of marketing there, said, I want a long form video like that one you did for Dr. Squatch. I was like, I don't think you understand. I don't think it's going to work the way you think it will. And she's like, I want it. And we did it. And sure enough, like, it really worked. People resonated with it. Yes, it sold tickets. Yes, they hit all-time sales records. But more importantly, people are proud of the marketing. And I think that's a really big thing to achieve for any organization.
Yeah. And, like, we're super humble because you forgot to mention that it also won an Emmy award. So that's
that as well. So,
that's pretty cool too. Cherry on top.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a really cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so neat. I mean, is there any product that you don't think Raindrop could apply its magic to, that Raindrop couldn't help? Is there any product that fits that description?
So let me give you a good example of one that I thought wouldn't work, and it totally did.
Okay, cool.
Because I think this got me thinking so much differently about, like, this one client, I would say, completely changed the way I think about marketing. And so I want to tell you the story because I think anyone listening to it would find it really interesting, which is we got approached by a group called Techmetric. And at the time, we had really only done one thing that was SaaS focused. But they basically sell a software that helps auto body shops to organize their auto body shop and to get their invoicing out, everything else. And so I was like, oh man, like, so how big is your target audience? And they're like, well, there's, I don't know, maybe 10,000 auto body shops or something in the US, right? And I'm just thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, that's a really small audience. And like, how would we even reach these people? I mean, people that own auto body shops or, manage them, do they spend time on LinkedIn? Probably not. Like, maybe YouTube, maybe Facebook. I'm not really sure. And so what we did though was we kind of told them, like, hey, I don't think we could be successful for you here. And they came back to us and they're like, well, actually, we disagree. We think, since our software is roughly $3,000 a month, like, if we do this campaign with you, we only need to sell like 4 or 5 licenses and it'll pay for itself year one, let alone if it compounds over time. And I'm like, okay, that makes me feel a little better, but like, I don't know, like, it still seems kind of difficult. And so we came up with this whole game plan, which was, how do we reach the broadest audience possible with something that is forwardable, meaning something that people watch, consume, and then can forward to the decision makers? Because we kind of drew a pyramid and we said, okay, well, these decision makers are at the top, but who's below them? And we started saying, well, mechanics work for all of these groups, and a lot of mechanics are going to be on Facebook and Instagram. Well, who knows mechanics? Well, their wives and their friends and people that are into cars. And so we started like putting out the interest groups, and we realized, like, actually we have about 1 million people, maybe 3 million people that we can target, that we just need them to forward it to the 10,000. And we got, this might be more possible than we think to figure out a way to create a little Trojan horse, a little story, a little Trojan horse that could forward it on. And sure enough, when we made the ad, they turned it on, and within a couple of weeks, if not a month, they were like, we want more campaigns, and they came back for even more work. And it's what changed my mind about creating advertising for Raindrop in and of itself. We had never done anything for ourselves. And so as soon as we did that, I was like, okay, we got to make something for Raindrop. And now we're going to be on our like 3rd campaign after that, because our own advertising for ourselves has been so successful following that sort of pyramid, which is like, sure, there's only a couple of decision makers, but you can reach a lot more people. The problem is most people will ignore your ad unless it's entertaining and educational enough to capture your attention and be like, you got to check this out. And so if you start from that perspective, you have a swinging chance at reaching those 10,000 people, right? The decision makers. If I can get a social media manager who sees my ad to forward it to their CMO or to their VP of marketing, will now have a swinging chance. But if I make it so that's only for the VP of marketing, then that person that gets served the ad is going to ignore it. And that was the fundamental shift that made me go, okay, well, you can pretty much sell anything. The question is how do you position it well, and what form of entertainment do you need to get people to engage with it?
That's a game-changing insight. That's like, because people obsess about, okay, targeting on LinkedIn for, let's say, super specific job titles it's so expensive to reach these people, or you got to do crazy cold outreach, et cetera, et cetera. But man, that whole philosophy, like you said, turns it all on its head.
I think we're going to see a boom in the next 3 years of more traditionally SaaS and sales focused teams taking advantage of this type of content, because what it does is it shortens your sales cycle, because people are able to watch a 90-second or 3-minute ad and not only be introduced to the problem and solution that it's solving, but also hit on some of the frequently asked questions, some of the pain points. And that prospect, before they've even reached out, has already started to place in their mind where they think your product or service is going to fit in their world. And so, we used to get on phone calls with people and they'd be like, so who are you and what do you do? Versus now, when they get after they've seen our ad, they get on the phone, they're like, I love the campaign you did for X, Y, and Z. And I love how you talked about this. This is how I think it might work for us. And you're like, great, my name is Jacques, right? Like, I'm talking like that. That's how fundamentally it shifts the conversation. And I think a lot of people feel like their product's too technical for people to understand without a demo. And I'm like, is it? Or is it that you haven't worked hard enough to figure out how to make it simple so that you can get the call? So anyway, I'm just pontificating now at this point.
No, that's amazing.
I do think we're going to just see a rise of this edutational style content for some higher ticket or SaaS and enterprise level businesses.
Yeah, that's crazy. And how do you, so you mentioned that 30 to 50 hours, you and your team invest 30 to 50 hours before you can write the first word, right? So in terms of
notes.
Yeah, no, that was really struck me, because, and then I'm thinking here, because what you're talking about taking something that's super specific, has a super specific target audience, a lot of technical details involved, and then you're making it really easy to understand. That's not a simple process. Like how do you go about, for a complicated SaaS product, or for the auto body shop, for instance, how do you go about digesting something that might be entirely new to you and your team, and then being able to encapsulate it into really simple value proposition and make it entertaining? Like, what goes into those 30 to 50 hours?
I think, you'll remember this from my presentation, but I think the core approach is, I think where a lot of people get kind of like stuck, is they start with, what do I want to say? Right. And so they just start with that. That's the number one thing that, most people fill out a creative brief and they go, this is what I want. This is what I want to say. And, our team backs into it with such a different approach by, instead of asking, what do I want to say? We start with, well, what do they need to hear? And to figure out what they need to hear, we instead of thinking about our why as a company, we start thinking about their why. I've been saying now for some time that Simon Sinek came up with this whole construct that's fantastic, around, people don't buy your what, they buy your why. And I shared there at that presentation that it's not untrue, but it's the same as believing, at one point we believed that the earth was flat, and then we realized that it was circular. And not only that, we then realized later on that we revolve around the sun, that the sun does not revolve around the earth. And so I think a lot of companies, a lot of brands are still stuck at a point where they don't realize that, they revolve around the consumer. The consumer does not care about their why. Their, meaning the brand's why, or the SaaS product's why. They care about their why. And so when we talk to a a B2B SaaS company that maybe I don't have any idea what their business does, our first question is, okay, great. What is their why? What's the why that your consumer has for buying this, right? What is their why? And most people go, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, who would have that answer? I was like, probably your sales team. Like your sales team lives this, like intuitively they understand, like at some point they're not buying this SaaS software because of some feature or because of some pricing model or anything else. Like there's some fundamental thing that you are solving for their why. And it's usually more emotional. It's more like, oh, well, I have software that previously I used and it crashed and it made me look really bad. Or, man, we're really outdated in the way we handle things, and we know we need to step into the future. But like my biggest fear is having to train people on how to use the new software. Like their why is a fear of pain of training, right? And so once you start thinking about it, that was the thing with even Techmetric. It was like the goal of the advertising was to say, we're going to help you switch, and it's going to be so easy to do that. It doesn't really matter what the features are. They already know it's going to be better than what they already have, right? Most people haven't switched softwares because they don't want to learn a new program, or they're afraid of asking the rest of the company to learn a new program. And so the core why that they have is like, I want this to be better. I want it to reflect well on me, and I want people not to grumble that they have to learn something new, right? And it's like, as you start peeling back the layers, you go, okay, well, this is the how we answer those things, instead of saying, well, our software does X, Y, and Z. It's like, none of that stuff matters unless you can emotionally make people to go, oh, your company will be fine switching over, and people won't be mad at you for having to learn a new program. And I hope that answer makes sense, but it's like, we spend all of our time figuring out, okay, what are going to be these emotional doors that we can open that people are going to respond to. And it's not that we come up with this one that we know is going to be it. We come up with like 4 or 5, and then we approach. Great. Now that we know the doors, what's the path to those doors? And that's where we get into like, what are the features and how long does it take to implement, and why did the product even get developed in the first place, and why do people love the product, right? We connect them up to those doors that you can walk through to say, is the door, you want to save time and money? Is the door that you want to make sure that people have a great experience? And saving time and money is great, but nothing else matters if people have a bad experience, or people are frustrated or mad at you as the IT person, right? The list goes on. That's how we're spending the majority of our time up front before we even start writing it in words.
Wow, that's crazy. Is there any sort of framework that you use when you're, for instance, going and talking to the client sales team, extracting this kind of information, or is it just kind of emerge after a lot of conversation and a lot of digging?
No, we use a very rigid framework, because it's like, you never want to leave a stone unturned. If you care to visit mybrandpop.com, mybrandpop.com is kind of our SaaS version of our process, where it's literally a series of questions that get to the root of, what are the 3 things that we're really trying to focus on are, what are the functional benefits of the brand, which most people can answer, right? Like, functionally, what does this solve? Then what are the emotional benefits, which I think a lot of people can solve as well pretty easily. Emotionally just means like, how does it make me feel to use this brand or use product or service? But I think the one that's most elusive but most powerful is, what are the self-expressive benefits of engaging with this product or service? And meaning, what am I saying about myself by buying this software, or by buying this hat, or by buying this computer, or whatever you're buying? What am I saying about myself? And if you can reverse engineer that, then people will more likely respond to your advertising, because it's fulfilling in them something that they're trying to become, or want to become, or believe they are already. And that's where we see that magic happen. And And sometimes you have to ask more than one question to get to that point, though. It's not as easy. Sometimes it's just picking that in thin air. It's like kind of like a game of almost like, I think, like a detective trying to figure out, like, what is this deeper thing that people are saying about themselves by buying whatever it is that they're buying.
Got it. So you mentioned self-expressive benefits. Can you walk us through the different types and different categories of benefits that you think about when it comes to, their why? Like the functional.
It's the functional. Well, so just to make sure I understand your question, because there's functional benefits, there's emotional benefits, there's self-expressive benefits. I don't know necessarily have, like, within self-expressive benefits more categories, if that makes sense. It's usually those three, and they map back to, when Simon Sinek talks about people's why, that he says there's what you do, there's how you do it, and there's why you do it. It's the same idea. It's just those three rings. It's just like, what does your product provide to people functionally? How does it make them feel? What are they saying about themselves by interacting with your brand? And one of the questions we would ask is, it's one thing to say, how does, I'm going to pick a random brand, like ClickUp, for example. ClickUp is a software. Great. So I think a way a lot of people think is like, okay, emotionally, how do I feel when I'm using ClickUp? Okay, well, you can answer that question. But then if you want to take a step further, it's like, if I'm wearing a ClickUp hat and I'm walking around in a ClickUp hat, it has nothing to do with the actual software, just wearing the ClickUp hat, what am I telling someone else about myself? That exercise gets really interesting with people, because you get to a much more, like, sizzle type of answer, where it's like, it's less about like, oh, well, I tell my, because on an emotional level, they're like, oh, well, I'm someone who's innovative, and I'm someone who's, forward thinking, and I'm organized, and you know what I mean? Like they would answer it that way. And then you extend it to ClickUp, to like the hat, and you're like, well, why would someone wear a ClickUp hat? And it's like, well, because I want to be associated with the future. Like, I feel like I'm part of using software that's building the future, like software that's interesting now. Like, and so then you start, oh, okay, interesting. Like, really, it's about being someone who's building the future, not about necessarily someone who's organized. Like, those are two very different reasons why someone would work something. And so then we'd be like, cool, that's a cool door. How can we convince people or mirror back to them that by using ClickUp, you are not just seeing the future, you're helping to build the future. And that's where then we'd ask ourselves, well, what other brands are doing that well? Well, Tesla's an obvious one. Like, we would just start saying, okay, well, what can we extrapolate from other brands that are already doing this well in their categories, and what can we learn to bring over to this ad campaign?
Wow. And that all starts with that brand pop framework you're talking about.
Correct.
mybrandpop.com. I didn't even know this existed. This is crazy. Super, super cool. That's fantastic that people, I'm sure you have only so much bandwidth, right? You can't take on every project, but it's amazing that other people are going to be able to tap into that framework and apply it to their business. That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, do you see moving from, talking about, for instance, William Painter or Dr. Squatch or any of the other massively successful YouTube ads specifically, because we have a real YouTube focused audience. Do you see anything change when you start to go from more of a direct response focus in terms of, looking at hardcore click-based metrics to a situation where maybe attribution and the results aren't as granularly
Totally.
I'm just curious about that process.
I think if I had one piece of advice to give to anyone that's in charge of marketing, or in charge of for any sort of omnichannel marketing, the very first thing I would install on my website is something called Bestie, Bestie. It is a survey platform, a post-purchase survey platform. That it takes things a step further. It's really interesting the way they do it. But people would say, "Well, I heard about your brand from TikTok," and then it automatically pulls in whether it's your TikTok feed, your Meta feed, whatever, your influencers. It automatically pulls those top performing ad assets. People can actually select which ones they saw first, top of funnel. And because really where we've seen the shift happen is in the post-purchase survey data, because oftentimes, I mean, I think about it all the time. It's like, great. So let's say you're running YouTube ads at velocity. You're running, tens of thousands of dollars a day worth of YouTube ads. Well, if they hit the website, if they watch this 2.5, 3 minute ad, hit the website, abandon cart, then get remarketed on Meta all of a sudden, well, Meta's going to get that conversion, and it's always going to be like, some bottom of the funnel type ad. And so it's like, you just are never able to get your hands on like what the heck is happening top of funnel. That's like starting this sort of process. And I had a really great episode recently with on my own podcast with the guy Chris Greneau from Manscaped, and he was talking about ultimately certain ads just have a bigger brand impact. They're the ones that people like take note of and can recall. He's like, oftentimes they even have things like celebrities, even though people will end up purchasing off of some other ad at some other point in time. How do you drive performance and brand building? And I think that's really what we've been trying to do over time is like top of funnel. We want people to buy at a slightly higher clip, on the first time seeing the ad than they would like top of funnel cold traffic, but then it also tees up better conversions down funnel. But if your down funnel metrics are always going to look better. And so if you're like, shoot, like no matter what, this like one offer ad always kills it for us. Well, you're never going to be able to grow your business off of bottom of funnel. You always have to grow your business off of top of funnel. And so our brands that have been able to figure out YouTube have figured out what their metrics are. And I'm using YouTube as an example because it could be OGT, it could be TikTok, any of these new channels that are like less one-to-one. And frankly, Meta is the same way now that iOS changed. Like as soon as iOS changed, it was like, oh, all this is going to do is make every platform basically what YouTube has been for the last 4 years, where it's like, shoot, I only have like half my data. But yet I have 100% of my sales. How do I account for these? I've heard a lot of people say that they will figure out their YouTube number. For a lot of people, they'll add about 40% to what their true CPA is. So if they're trying to hit $100 CPA, they'll allow $140 CPA. That makes sense. So they'll actually provide a little bit more leeway, knowing it'll lead to things like more, like if you look at your direct traffic, if you look at your how often people are Googling your brand, there's going to be a lift in those areas. And so a lot of our brands are using post-purchase survey data and triangulating the lift in branded search to be like, oh, this really works for us. And so, but there's never going to be like some perfect in-platform, easy way to say, oh yeah, for sure, this is like worth scaling. You have to figure out what that looks like for your brand.
That's crazy. Do you know Thomas Hopkins by any chance?
Man, the name sounds familiar, but I'm not sure why.
Okay, he was the head of growth at masterclass.com from, I think, when they went from 20 something million a year to like 150 million a year. And it was interesting because he mentioned the post-purchase survey. They're spending like $1 million a day in some cases across every platform. And he was saying the post-purchase survey was kind of the like Rosetta Stone of top of funnel traffic, really. I mean, among many others, but just like you said now, it was all about triangulating the data, and that post-purchase survey was kind of, is one of the best things they had to determine what was actually driving sales top of funnel. So that's super interesting. And that software sounds amazing, actually. I've heard of people. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's brand new, and I found out about it through Trevor Crump. he's not only a fantastic marketer, he also has a little following on TikTok as well. Just that type of technology is really big.
That's amazing, man. Jacques, I know you're a busy guy, so I want to respect your time, man. This has been an awesome show with you, and just gotten so many insights. I guess the last question really is like, you've worked with so many great companies, but who would be a dream client for you and for Raindrop? Like, if you could wave a magic wand and work with one client, who would that be?
I should just have a predetermined answer for this. Trying to think, I'm like, who have I proactively reached out to recently? I've always felt like, I think we really enjoy, I recently added someone on LinkedIn from Airstream, which is like a more like camping type brand. I mean, anything in that like Yeti, Airstream, like, camping type environment. Even though I'm not like super huge into camping, I just think our team really thrives off of that. And I should have a better answer to this. Honestly, one day I'd love to work with like a sports team to do something fun. I love the Savannah Bananas are bananas, but their stuff is literally changing the game. I think that a lot of these team sports are ripe for disruption. And then ClickUp has also been on my list of, I mentioned them earlier in the podcast, but they're based out of San Diego.
Yeah, that's right.
Their product. So they're on my dream list, if you will.
I'll tell you this, so we have we track most or all of their ads on ClickUp, and they haven't been spending as much on YouTube as they were, say, a year ago. So I think that they are ripe for a conversation with you. And I think that you can open up the floodgates once again for them. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, Jacques, so where can people find out more about you? Where can people reach out if they want to talk about having one of these amazing ads made? Where can they go find your methodology? Just where can we find you?
Best places to reach me. I spend time online. So a mix of either Twitter or LinkedIn. And of course our website, raindrop.agency, for anything more like immediately work related. But I also post quite a bit to TikTok now too. So I'm pretty much everywhere you can find on the internet. I'm not on Pinterest, so don't try to find me there, but I'm very active on a mix of TikTok, LinkedIn, and Twitter as well.
Amazing. And do you have a secret prank channel on TikTok that you're running in the background, or?
I don't, but I probably should. Maybe sometime when we're offline, I'll tell you about my crazy ideas. But I have a lot of them.
Amazing. Awesome, Jacques. Thank you so much. It's been real joy to have you on the show, and hopefully we can do a follow-up. Got a lot of questions remaining about just how you built your team, just the amazing culture that you have there, and a lot of other stuff. But this has been fantastic. So thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks. We'd be happy to. And thanks for the time today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of VidTao Podcast. Again, my name is Ian Naj, co-founder of VidTao, and really appreciate you having a listen. And it means a lot. So if you have any feedback, go ahead and email us at info@vidtao.com. Love to hear your ideas for future shows, future guests. If you want to be a guest, let us know. Love to chat. Also, just as a reminder, this show has been sponsored by VidTao, which is our free YouTube ad library, vidtao.com. Again, you can go to VidTao and look up over 1 million ads at this point inside of VidTao. And they're all unlisted YouTube ads. You can see what your competitors are running, track the results on a day-by-day basis, find new ads inside of our YouTube ad library, VidTao. And we also have a premium edition of VidTao. So the library is free to access, but for full unlimited access to the library, we have a premium edition of VidTao. And we also have training from our Inceptly.com Agency, which is our sister company to VidTao, where we've managed over $150 million on YouTube. We provide training on media buying, creatives, tracking, copywriting, everything in between. It's all there inside of VidTao Premium. And right now we're running a very special deal on VidTao Premium, and you can go claim that right now at vidtao.com. When you sign up for free, you'll see the offer to join Premium, and go there and check that out. And last thing, we also do free brainstorm calls with our agency Inceptly. Go to inceptly.com/call. And we love brainstorming with you on your video advertising and just marketing in general. Love to chat. So inceptly.com/call, CALL. Would love to speak with you. So thanks again for joining us, and looking forward to the next show. In the meantime, have a great week.